Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a special episode of Shouting into the Void, where we're looking at the whole of the 2005 Series 1 of Doctor Who. I'm trying to avoid just saying Series 1 because I know if somebody stumbles across this, like, it's not Series 1, it's Series 1. So,
It's actually season 26.
yes, so I'm trying to I'm trying to avoid that. Um, if you've missed it, by all means go back through the channel and have a look. I've made a playlist of all of our episodes now so that people can easily find them. We have spent 13 weeks going through series 1 of Doctor Who, watching episode after episode, talking after each of them about what we sort of thought, what we liked and disliked. And in this video, we're going to try and go over the series as a whole. Effectively, it'll follow the same format as we have with the episodes. We've got 3 good things about the series, 3 bad things. We're also going to talk about our favourite episodes, and sort of, I know Liam's been keeping a record of what we've given each episode, rating wise. So we're going to look at how that sort of played out across the series. But yeah, if you don't know what Doctor Who is about or what Series 1's about, effectively it's the first series since the revival in 2005. Stars Christopher Eccleston as the Ninth Doctor, Billie Piper as Rose Tyler, and later on in the series we get John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness. And effectively they just travel through time and space having adventures. There's a fair bit of death, to be fair, more than I remember and more than I ever associate with Doctor Who, but there is quite a bit of death. Um, and there's some low moments, there's some high moments, there's some fun, there's all sorts. It effectively covers the spectrum. So I guess we'll sort of start with, how did you feel about series 1 overall?
I think it holds up really, really well. There's only one episode I'm not the biggest fan of, which is good. I wonder what that could be. And yeah, I think it had so much pressure on it, I think, to be successful because it's, when Doctor Who was cancelled, everyone kind of laughed at it and thought it was stupid and everything. So it was kind of a risk bringing it back in the first place. But I think it has some really funny moments, has some really emotional moments. I think the cast throughout were fantastic. Some really cool villains and themes, ideas running through it. And yeah, some parts are a bit dated, but I can talk about that later anyway. But overall, I think it's still probably one of the strongest revival series that we've had.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I think, and for it to be the first one as well, there's no sort of bar. And this, I think, sets the bar quite high for what people expect moving forwards. And often, like I said, often people tend to skip series 1 because a lot of people just go straight for David Tennant. But I do think you're missing out on a lot of great stories and adventures of character if you do skip series 1 and the Ninth Doctor. So yeah, there's 13 episodes, and it was shown, I think, in the summer of 2005. I want to say it's like June, July, but I might be wrong. But yeah, we'll sort of start with, we do 3 best, 3 worsts. So what's your first best point?
The lead actors, aka Chris Eccleston and Billie Piper, later John Barrowman, I'm sure you could include him. They were all fantastic. Say what you will about Rose as a character. We certainly fucking have. Billie Piper, irregardless of that, has been phenomenal, I think, from start to finish.
Yeah.
Easily kind of stolen the show in a few episodes, I would say, as well. Chris Eccleston's fantastic from the very first time he's on screen, right until he fades away into David Tennant. And yeah, again, the show could have easily fallen flat, I think, without good actors in the Doctor and Companion role, but we got some good actors in those roles. I think their chemistry is really great. They can be very funny with the comedic stuff. They could also be great with the dramatic side of things as well. And yeah, I think when John Barrowman later gets added on, the chemistry is even better. The dynamic between the 3 of them is great. And even some of the episodes I'm not as big of a fan of, those guys can easily carry it and make it watchable. So I think the huge resounding success probably of this first series is Chris Eccleston and Billie Piper.
Yep, that's my top one as well. The actors overall, even most of the guest cast are pretty solid.
Mhm.
And if you think about who Billie Piper was before this, she wasn't known for her acting. She was, I'm not going to say an unknown, because she was known to the majority of the British public, I think, at the time. But she hadn't like proved her acting chops, I don't think, elsewhere. And she's obviously gone on to have good success in other TV shows. A lot of the actors that star in Doctor Who have amazing success going forward. I mean, just look at Karen Gillan, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that to cast a sort of a top tier actor like Christopher Eccleston, who's known for doing these deep dramas where he's not necessarily a likable character, and then partner him with somebody that's literally half his age, hasn't really done much acting before, and then they put them both into this sci-fi show that was known for being terrible sort of towards its end.
Mm.
You know, that all could have come across as a terrible mistake, but it worked. It worked really well. And yeah, I don't know. I can't see how the show could have come back without this original pairing to start with.
Yeah.
If they jumped straight in with David Tennant and Rose, I don't think it would have had the same impact. I don't think it wouldn't have worked. But yeah, and moments with Christopher Eccleston throughout this whole series, if you should look at his performance in Dalek, is a standout, and Boomtown, and even in sort of Parting of the Ways that we just watched, he's amazing in all of them. You know, there's never a moment where I thought, oh, Christopher Eccleston is not very good in this.
Yeah.
I never thought that, even for like the character. I didn't think he was never the worst part of any episode, and he was most of the time he was one of the best parts of the episode, to be fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's also my first best point.
Sweet.
So we're almost agreeing. Let's see how long it lasts. We'll go on to my second best point. The Daleks.
Okay,
It might be just because we're coming off Parting of the Ways, and we've not whatever. But I just think the reintroduction of this classic villain, that is so like ingrained in British history. I think they do an excellent job of bringing them back and making them scary. Making them a menace. I know there's episodes in Classic Who where they're not quite that. They're a bit of a laughing stock at times. And even in Dalek, they make the point that it's nothing. It's not deadly. It's just like a big oversized pepper pot. It's not something you should be scared of, but they successfully brought that back. And it's the thing with a lot of the monsters, they're scary monsters. Some might look weird, like the Slitheen, but you still wouldn't want one of them running after you, in a corridor. And I think just the way they brought the Daleks into this, and they didn't, I don't think they overused them, but they made them menacing, and they really set them up for the power that they'll have in the universe sort of moving forwards, I think. And we do see variants of them as well throughout the Emperor Dalek, the black domed Daleks, just the single Daleks, and we get more of that going forward as well, which I enjoy. So it did really set the baseline for Daleks moving forward in New Who. And I've said Daleks too much, so now it sounds weird.
Just you wait.
So your second best point.
Well, this was my third, but it ties into yours, so we might as well just get into it. I've put there's a very good mix, probably one of the best mixes in terms of how much some are used, of classic villains and new monsters. Obviously, the main ones we had from classic were the Autons and the Daleks in this. That's about 4 episodes out of 13, and I think that's a pretty decent amount. And then the rest, the Slitheen, say what you will about them, I think they're still remembered.
They're
all these years
iconic.
later. They are iconic, certainly with their big eyes. And yeah, I like even lesser villains like the Gelth and stuff. I think are really fun. The Empty Child is still, one of the most quoted Doctor Who things. So everything with that, I think some fell a bit flat. Long game,
like the Jagrafess of the Holy Max.
Yes, that. Some weren't the best, but even then, I think they're just fine. They're just kind of there. And I suppose that is the point of the Jagrafest, but also we'll get into that in my negatives anyway. But yeah, you've already mentioned how great the Daleks were in this. I've kind of forgotten how great the Daleks can be. And the Autons, I think, were a really cool way of bringing the show back with them. There were a lot of parallels, I think, with the 9th Doctor's run and the 3rd Doctor's run. So the fact that they both have like the same monsters, their first story is pretty fun. And they're not like a hugely popular, like well-known one to like the general public, I would say. So to have them come back in the first episode, you could convince yourselves that they are a brand new monster, even though they're not. So I thought that was a very good choice. And yeah, we just got some really fun, different kind of ideas for monsters, like the Reapers as well. Obviously, it's kind of problematic how they're even used anyway, because you'd have to keep using them and using them and using them, which is just not sustainable. But the idea of them, the design of them is great. Yeah, the Empty Child and everything's really iconic as well. The Slitheen even coming back a bit later on in the series. I just loved how they balanced the villains out. And I think, you know, for the most part, and I think often a story is often as good as its villain, I would say sometimes. I think that's why the finale is so good. But the fact that there's only like one I'd be like, on in a 13 episode series, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I mean, going forwards, we'll see that there's always at least one episode where you're kind of like, there's always a dud episode, I think, in especially series 1 to 4. You always know there's going to be that one. And unfortunately, the long game does that, but we'll get onto that. And I think a lot of the villains in this are sort of one-off ones as well. You know, they're not ones that reoccur. Obviously, the Slitheen come back in this series, and they're in Sarah Jane. They don't come back in Doctor Who. The Nth Charge you can never do again. The Reapers are obviously difficult to use again. The Jagrafess, as you know, as not great as it was, that'll never be seen again. Even the Gelth, you know, they get mentioned, but they're not used again. So I think the fact that there's a load of one-off villains and you can only see their stories in this series, I think really adds to the uniqueness of series 1, I think.
Yeah, and with the Slitheen, I obviously didn't like the Fartoon stuff with them, the over excessive use of it in Aliens of London. But then Boomtown came along and redeemed them, so even that's really good. That's
it. And I'm to be fair, I'm surprised they haven't been used again. At least in mainline like, Doctor Who.
It's like a main villain, yeah.
Because, you know, the Weeping Angels from series 3, they've used a lot. I mean, it probably helps that the person that created them was the showrunner for a little time, so they can use them. But, you know, I don't know why. It just doesn't make sense to me that the Slitheen hasn't come back. Just because obviously they're used in Sarah Jane. You see the costumes every now and then, but they've never been the villain again. And I think there's a space for that kind of story, I think. If Chris Chibnall wants to use some more nostalgia, get him in. But yes, that's fair enough. My sort of third best point then is the tone, I think, of the series. It sometimes it walks it very finely between very dark and too funny, but I think it gets that balance right a lot of the time, and I think a lot of that is down to Christopher Eccleston to start with. You know, a lot. I remember, when I think about this overall, having not watched it, I sort of think, oh, it's a bit dark, it's a bit, you know, it's a bit gritty, I think, series 1, and it's not normally that entertaining or that fun. But sort of rewatching it like this, I was like, oh, hang on a minute, there are plenty of moments in here that are hilarious, even if it's just us having made them ourselves, whether that's the bullets don't work or the Slitheen lines or just the pure memes that come out of it. But I think Boomtown's a great example of that tonal shift, because it can do humor and funniness of trying to chase down the Slitheen, and then it can also do the hang on a minute, are you actually going to kill someone? Is that what you are? And they sort of tease a similar thing for that in series 8, I think, with Peter Capaldi. But for me, I think it's done much better here, because there's just it finds the right balance between a serious tone and a humor tone. Because for every, I don't know, what's the funniest episode? For every Aliens of London, you have Dalek. You know, you have that kind of balance, and you never think, okay, now that we've had too many silly episodes, and you don't think we've had too many dark episodes. Although we do get Father's Day, Empty Child, Doctor Dances, and then Boomtown, and then the series finale. So you could argue that those are quite a few dark episodes in a row, but there is the humor in there that still sort of elevates them, and they're not just serious all the time. But yeah, so what's your sort of final best point?
The Doctor's story arc is mine. I think the fact that they reintroduce the Doctor, kill all his race,
Yeah.
He's kind of just this lonely, wandering traveler. Survivor's guilt from this awful war that completely kind of wrecked him. And then he meets Rose. He kind of gets that lust for life back, I guess, as the series progresses, discovering more and more things, meeting some, enemies that were affected by the Time War, like the Autons, the Gelth, the Daleks, obviously. And just as time progresses, you see him warm up to life again, want to explore, want to actually have a life of his own and do these wonderful things and travel with Rose and Jack, all of that. And then at the end of the series, he's faced with the same choice he made during the Time War to kind of kill everything. And he doesn't do it this time. He kind of came full circle. And, he started off the series as someone who absolutely hated himself, I think. And at the end, he says, I was fantastic. And that's such a really cool story arc for him. And I probably the best story arc any Doctor's ever gotten, like fully complete. And it helps that he only had the one series in that way, I guess. But yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I do wonder what it would have been if he'd stayed on for series 2.
Yeah.
Especially if we keep the same episodes. I don't know if maybe the series 2 finale would have hit harder. I don't know if there's that. They might have developed that relationship more maybe with series 2, but it feels that relationship is solely with 10 and Rose, not 9 and Rose.
Yeah.
Because I think that's another thing, is that this series doesn't get bogged down with the romance of the Doctor and the companion, which I think series 2 does a little bit, and we also see elements of that with the rest of Tennant and Matt Smith, where there's always that will they won't they with the companion type thing. Which was never in Doctor Who in the first place. I think the first time that the Doctor kissed the companion was in the TV movie. So that's not a thing. But for some reason, a lot of people think, oh, the Doctor should be in love with their companion. It's like, no, they don't need to. That's not.
No,
that's not the point. Looking at you, Yasmin and 13 Doctor fans.
Oh, I can't believe you just done that. Wow. I hope they don't find this. You are fucked.
They won't. We're talking about series 1. They won't come here.
You have no power here.
But yeah, it's not bogged down in the romance. It's just bogged down. It's just about this man traveling with his friends, which is what it was always about. And I'm not saying you can't have romance between a Doctor and a companion. That's fine, but that should never be the sole point, I don't think, of an arc. Really.
Yeah, because even like the Daleks, like, oh, will you save the woman you love, blah blah blah. But that's not the whole story.
No,
it's
and even
bigger than that.
That's one line in the whole series, and then they kiss at the end, but I don't see that as a romantic kiss. To be fair, it's more of a I need to get this time vortex out of Rose, and this is the only way I can do it. Because
shame.
Well, yeah, because they use the sort of similar trick with Martha, don't they? In Smith and Jones, when they need to confuse the Jadoon scanner and stuff. So
I hate that so much.
We'll come on to that.
I hate that. I can't wait to get to that. I hate it so much.
But yeah, and that's another example of why romance shouldn't play into the Doctor's relationships with people, because it can cause people not to like certain characters and it can cause other problems. But that's writing. That's what you have to do for plot. But I just think that it's pure Doctor in this. It's pure like reconciling with what he's done and realizing that, hey, it's okay to be a not a great person. You can still help people. You can still have good times, really. Even if you do murder 2 species. It's
or did
fine. He? Well, yeah, that's the thing. He only murdered 1, technically. But yeah, so we'll sort of nip on to our worsts now, unless you sort of have any other best points that you want to bring up.
I imagine some might trickle out as we continue, but those are my main ones.
Yeah. So my first worst, and although great acting, I'll be shocked if no one predicted this, but it's Rose.
What?
No way. And I sort of debated this because I was like, is she actually the worst part of series 1? Not necessarily, but she's not. There are more episodes where I don't like her than I do. And for that, I'm kind of like, okay. If I think of series 1, I don't think, hey, that was a good Rose moment. I always think of, hey, that was a good thing the Doctor did. Hey, that was a good thing the villain did. Rose isn't in my top moments of the series, I don't think. And like I said, last episode, when I was younger, I used to think she was great. I used to really like her. She's my favorite companion. But then as I've sort of grown older and more world weary in my old age of 24,
And you realise everyone's terrible.
yeah. I just sort of realised I was like, no, she's not good. And because we see nicer companions after Rose, which I think kind of shows her in a different light. We see how nice Martha is. We see how sort of fun Donna is. And then it sort of puts Rose in this, hang on a minute, she treated people horribly compared to the other ones. We've got this in, I think, with Gwyneth, she's not great to Gwyneth to start with. With Harriet Jones in Aliens of London, where she's like, oh, why are you talking to me? Why are you crying about an alien? What's going on? And we kind of see it with the plumber on the platform one. Again, she's not that great to her. And then we see it with Linda in the series finale as well, where she's just like, I hate this woman. Why is she here? And the biggest crime of all is obviously the way she treats Mickey. I know, Mickey's not got much going for him because he doesn't have a time machine. He can't take her around time and space. So if either way, he's going to seem less. But that doesn't mean you can treat him the way that she did. And we pointed out, like, she literally tells him to his face, there's nothing left for me here on Earth. Not only is that horrible to Mickey, that's horrible to her mum, who she also emotionally manipulated in the episode. So I just don't think she's great with people at all. And we can maybe write off that it's because she's 19. She doesn't have the sort of experience, even though she works at a shop. So therefore, she should have some customer service. And she should be able to pretend to be nice to people either way. But yeah, I think that just brings it down for me. I think she gets better in series 2. I think there's the Christmas Invasion, which we'll come on to. I think she kind of starts to turn. But yeah, series 2, I think she's much better than this one. I don't know why they change it. Maybe that was always the plan. But yeah, I mean, Billie Piper's great in the role. I think she is, I can't imagine anyone else playing Rose. But I just think the character's actions towards other people, I think, are what bring it down for me.
Yeah.
But never mind. What's your first worst then?
In a way, Rose. Not herself, because again, I don't mind Rose that much. Sometimes she is like, but more so the fact that the series tries to make her be the relatable one, and you're supposed to be seeing all this through her eyes. And obviously the audience wants you to kind of put yourself in her shoes and relate to her the most. But then I feel like they just squander that by the end of the series, because her message is, well, having a better life means leaving your family and ignoring them because they mean nothing to you if the doctor's around. I don't support that message per se. So I just feel like the fact that they've put her in like the center of the series in a way, this entire first series, just for that to be the ultimate message, I feel like some wires got a bit crossed there, and that's probably not what they were intending, but that's kind of how I interpret it now. So I think they just really squander what could have been a very interesting thing to do with a companion, because obviously companions in the classic series were more so, Doctor, what's this? What's that? A monster, save me.
Yeah.
But, there are some exceptions to that. Sarah Jane and Ace, for example. But it's a cool thing that they were trying to do, but I feel like they fell at the last hurdle with it.
And then I'm thinking about it now, but I'm thinking of the series 2 finale at this point as well. I'm like, it's the same situation. She's put in the same thing where I'm not going to say, I don't give a crap about my family. I'd rather be with the Doctor. She doesn't learn from that. So who knows? Maybe she doesn't get better in series 2. But yeah, that is an issue, I think. But I also get that you can have that. Well, I guess Martha does it. She goes, no, I'm not going anymore. But for most people, I think it would be the same. As you experience all this and you think, why would I want to go home? I think for Martha, it's a little bit different because obviously her family have been through this massive, horrible event. So she kind of needs to be there for them, whereas she doesn't need to be there for Jackie and Mickey. But yeah, I can see what you mean. She's not a great character. Yeah. The ultimate message from Rose is why do I need to stay in my boring life?
It's the fact that the one constant she's had in her life for like 19 years is her single mother who raised her on her own. Her love is dead, rotting in the ground, and she's put all of her life into trying to raise this girl. Granted, Jackie, I don't think is the best mother at times, but who is? But wow. But the fact that Rose just completely disregards that, I'm like, nah, screw her.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's not a good message for your kids.
I mean, maybe you could argue that the message should be, don't feel like you have to stay in one place. You can move, you can broaden your horizons. That is a good message. But saying you need to effectively cut off your family to do so is unnecessary. Because she would rather go back and kill herself than stay at home with Jackie and Mickey. That's effectively the end of Parting of the Ways. They're like, you might die. Fine, it's better than staying here. I'm like, hang on a minute. Is life really that bad? I don't think so. But yes, So there's some issues with Rose that maybe they might get sorted in series 2. But
I'm looking forward to rewatching series 2 and seeing how we feel.
Yes, yeah. I like I said, I remember thinking series 2 Rose was much better, but who knows? Maybe not. Maybe it's just series 4 Rose that's the best. We'll go on to we're sticking with characters for my second worst. Adam.
Oh, what a surprise!
He's only in. Well, his screen time is probably less than one episode, but he's in 2 episodes. And we have some terrible people in the show. Roderick is a prime example of that. Kathica in Long Game is a prime example of that. But Adam, for some reason, just rubs me the wrong way. He's just so entitled, so up himself, so like smart ass. He just thinks I just get the impression that he thinks he's better than everyone else. And he's only along with them in the Long Game because Rose has a crush on him, I think. And then he doesn't really do anything in that episode except the one thing he does do is wrong. And then even in Dalek, he taunts the Dalek when they're on the stairs, which I'm like, you've just at least seen this Dalek. You've at least heard him kill like 10 soldiers, and you're gonna stand there and yell at it. It still has a gun. It can still turn and shoot you.
Yeah.
So that annoyed me. And yeah, he's just terrible in the Long Game overall. He makes all the wrong decisions. He does on purpose deceive the Doctor and Rose to go and do his own thing. I mean, there's not. It sounds strange because I can't really say much about him because he's not in as many episodes as Rose, so there's not as many examples. But I think he taints Dalek for me slightly, and then he is one of the major factors why the Long Game doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my second worst bit. Soz. What's your next one?
In a way, it links. I think the impact that the Long Game felt like it should have had by the end of the series just isn't felt, and therefore I'm like, why did they bother making the Long Game? I think there's so many better episodes they just could have done.
Yeah.
And then, they did that. And I get what they were going for again, because it sets up the finale. The Doctor's actions in that episode caused the state it was in the finale. But that's one line, and then they completely kind of disregard it. Yeah. You don't even properly see the impact on that Earth anyway. It is very much, it becomes, the Doctor versus the Daleks, as it probably should have been. As soon as the Daleks turn up, all of that stuff's kind of completely disregarded anyway. So I don't know if a 45-minute episode that isn't that great anyway was even worth it for like one line of dialogue about the Doctor influencing all of this, but they don't even explore it.
Yeah,
so that for me, it's just that drags the overall arc down.
Well, that's it, because they even say in Bad Wolf that the Daleks have been manipulating it for hundreds of years. So they installed the Jagrafest there. But they don't I don't know, there's a good story there about how the Daleks manipulated everything. I think that would have been, it's too soon to put it in the Long Game's place. But I think that would have been, if we put, say if the Long Game was, if we follow Series 3's format, the Long Game was Utopia, and then we had these two finales, maybe it would work better.
I feel like that would have been good, actually, yeah.
But we still have the main issue of Adam's still in the Long Game.
Yeah.
If we keep them exactly the same, then there's still only a couple of dialogues to keep them tied together. But yeah, just it does stink of it being a filler episode, and then thinking, right, we need to sort of set some kind of seeds for the future, so we can say, hey, look, it was all there all along. But then again, the finale doesn't need that. The Bad Wolf arc doesn't need that. We don't need to see the Long Game to have us be told that the Daleks have been in it for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Because, it's fine. This isn't our Earth. We're not aware of what their society's like. Maybe if they'd shown us more of the actual Earth, we might have been more attached to it.
Yeah, 'cause I watched the Doctor Who Confidential cut down for the Long Game after we watched it. And Russell T Davies is like, and of course, there's still the question of who installed the Jagrafess. You will find out by the end of the series. I'm like, I didn't even realize that was a mystery.
Yeah.
Like, do we care?
Yeah, I know. I thought it was bankers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Long Game is just shit. But yeah, it's fine. Yeah, we'll go on to my sort of last worst. And this sort of came up because I was on a Facebook group, and the issue of a lot of Jodie Whittaker's episodes being set on Earth came up, and it made me
put this.
And it made me think, how many episodes are there on Earth in every series? Turns out there's a lot, and this one especially, they do not visit an alien planet.
It's Earth or a space station, basically.
It's Earth
isn't it?
or a space station above Earth. It's not even a space station far away. It's above Earth. And I mean, it's fine. It's the first series. They probably don't want to throw out all of these, loads of planet names and be like, we're here, and jumping everywhere. So it's a good sort of intro into the Doctor Who universe with, you're on Earth, you can relate to it, there are recognizable landmarks. But yeah, I just think it, and I didn't really notice it too much, but sort of going back and looking at it overall, you're like, oh yeah, there are a lot of episodes set on Earth, almost all except for 3, 4 are set on Earth.
And even then, it's the same space station, just 100 years later.
Yeah, 3 of those are the same space station, and the other one's a different space station. And it can be put down to cheap set design. It's easy to make the series as cheap as possible. But I think I would have liked to have seen, maybe see them go to Raxacoricofallapatorius rather than just say we're going to go there. I don't know, because it's strange because they don't even mention that many alien planets. Obviously we see all the aliens on Platform 1 in episode 2, but the only planet you sort of know of is the Slitheen homeworld. It doesn't really hint towards anything else. But yeah, and I'm glad that moving forward we do get a more we do get a kind of more varied approach to where we're going to go. Even if the first episode of Series 2 is New Earth.
But different.
Yeah.
And then that Secret of Norris Haim thing,
that
lockdown thing hints that it was just actual Earth anyway.
So yeah, exactly. So, Doctor Who is known for just sort of being based in London, and it's all the episodes in London, and they do get away with that. Obviously, with the new series, it's mainly in Sheffield, and they do go to other planets, and I enjoy the time, going back in time and meeting historical figures and being set during different periods on Earth. I think that really helps. If it was always a modern day Earth, then I'd have more of a problem with it. But as long as it's a good variation rather than it just being Earth, which, I mean, it could sound like I'm digging into John Pertwee here, because he is on Earth. That's the thing.
Like most of his era is just like 3/4 of his era is just Earth. Yeah.
But
there's stories, I think, more than anything, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a reason why he's on Earth. There's not really a reason why the Ninth Doctor and Rose keep coming back to Earth. other than budget, because they even mentioned that, even like when Rose is speaking to Mickey, they're like, oh, we went here, we went here, we went here. Like, why aren't we seeing these cool, amazing planets?
Yeah.
I know there's budget reasons, but come on, you can do it. It's fine. Although, to be fair, we might then be sitting here going, that's CGI in that episode about
That looks terrible.
Yeah, maybe. But it's a smart decision, but it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what were your sort of, I think your last worst?
Yeah, my last one. I would say this is a complaint coming from 2021. It can be seen as very, very dated.
Yeah.
I think. More so the game show aspect of it in Bad Wolf, which I'm not big on. But also, I wasn't big on it then, so I think it's a fine complaint to have. But, you know, the phones that they have, the mentions of like news round, stuff like that.
The speed dial where they flick it up and like in Boomtown and all their flip
some of the references. And obviously, I know this is nitpicky because at the time that was just how things were. But I also feel like a show like Doctor Who, you can go anywhere and anything. Somehow still managing to date yourself is kind of crazy that you can do that. I guess that comes from setting a lot of the stuff on Earth, which maybe they just can't escape from. But yeah, that's a tiny little nitpick, but I needed to think of something. And yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even like if we think of the CGI in the series, because that can also date a show more physically, I think. I think they use CGI very well in this. There's only maybe one moment maybe with the Slitheen, I think, where they like run. I think that's the only sort of terrible CGI I can think of.
Yeah, that doesn't look great. Because like the Empty Child, like transformation stuff looks great. Or that kind of thing.
Oh, the Slitheen run, and when Mickey puts his hands on the dustbin and he has to, that's also terrible.
Yeah.
But again, in 2005, that would have been fine. You know, that's not terrible. Although 2005 was also the release of Revenge of the Sith, where that starts with the amazing, like, when the spaceships come in and they fly over the huge battle over Coruscant. That's very good, and that's not dated at all, and that was the same year. So
I suppose that's the movie versus TV show budget.
Yeah. I mean, Star Wars is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. I think Doctor Who's probably just multi-million. If that, to be fair.
Just.
But yeah, I do think there are some things that date this a little bit, whether that's references and stuff. I can't blame, Father's Day is probably the exception because it needs to be dated because it's the 80s or whatever it was, late 80s. But yeah, even when they like go to the future, and it's something that Classic Who suffers with as well. When they go to the future, it's very hard to do future things in the present because you could always be wrong. And there's sort of examples of that, I think, throughout this. But it is what it is. It's always going to happen. We're going to have that issue throughout the whole of Doctor Who, no matter what. I think even if you look at Jodie Whittaker's era, there are things in that you'll think, 10 years down the line, that's not going to hold up.
Yeah, it's even now like the Morax thing in the Witchfinders, that like tentacly thing, like.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I guess that's sort of our best and worst. So we'll sort of go into some episodes overall. So we sort of agreed that we'll compare what our best episodes is compared to what we actually think our best episodes are. So what is your favorite episode? What was the one you're most likely to go and rewatch?
Because I've written here my heart's favorite and my head's favorite episode.
Yeah.
And the one I do rewatch the most genuinely is Boomtown. So I put that down. So that it's just a comfort watch, I think, with that one. It's just so much fun, even though it can get kind of dark with the themes. I feel like they don't delve too much into that aspect of it. It's just a bit of like hearty relief before the finale. There's some good stuff there with like the core 4 characters. And yeah, it's just an absolute riot, even though didn't get the highest score overall for me with this series. But Boomtown would be the one I'd go to and rewatch the most.
Yeah. For me, obviously, I love Boomtown. I adore it. But part of me is now like, I've watched it a lot, so I need to calm down a little bit. So for me, I think it's probably Dalek is probably my next top one. I think it's a tie between that and Rose, to be fair.
Yeah.
But with Dalek, I just think, again, it's the world building in that, it explores the Doctor a bit more. There's some excellent dialogue between the Doctor and the Dalek. There's some great Dalek killing in it. And yeah, I just think it expands the lore a lot more in that episode than in other ones. And then for Rose, It's the start. It's just it just feels exciting. No matter how many times you've watched Rose, the episode just feels fresh and new,
Yeah.
and it feels like this is the start, and you're all fully on board no matter what. So I think probably Dalek, but Rose came very close for myself. But,
Interesting.
So what were our actual favorites?
Well, we're both wrong. Your favorite was Boomtown, shocking no one. You gave that a 9.5. My favorite was actually joint because I gave them both 9.5, and that was the Dr. Dances and Parting of the Ways.
Oh, interesting. Both part 2s.
Yes.
Which you did say you seem to prefer part 2s than part 1s.
Normally, yeah.
So
just hold up.
Yeah, clearly. Do you think that trend will continue in series 2, or do you think?
What 2-parters do we have?
We've got.
I think I do prefer. I definitely prefer Age of Steel to Rise of Cybermen.
Interesting. Okay, and then we have the Satan Pit.
Impossible Planet and Satan Pit. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure about that. I can't wait to rewatch that.
And then obviously Army of Ghosts and Doomsday.
I probably do prefer Doomsday. Let's be honest, because Daleks and Cybermen bitch fight, iconic.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So maybe it will then. Maybe it will continue.
Well, I guess we'll see.
I think I've always preferred part 1s, but I've probably proved myself wrong with that. with some of the ratings I gave these, I was like, oh yeah, okay, maybe the second part's better.
Okay. Interesting.
Yes. So I understand you've pulled together some interesting stats from our stats.
They're certainly stats. Whether or not they're interesting, I suppose, is up to all you watching to decide. But yeah, we've already talked about our favourites. Our joint least favourite, shocking no one, was The Long Game because we both gave it 4.
Poor Simon Pegg.
Oh dear. And then the best 2-parter for both of us, overall combining our averages, was Bad Wolf and The Parting of the Ways, which overall with both our scores got an 8.8 out of 10, which is pretty solid.
Yeah.
And then the lowest scoring 2-parter was Aliens of London, World War 3, but still got 7.8 on average.
Bad. Yeah,
which is pretty damn good.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, for us, the 2-parters actually got better as they went along, combining our average scores. That's not the case individually.
Yeah,
I must say. But yeah.
Yeah, my good recommendations for the Slitheen is brought down by your bad ones.
Basically, yeah. I gave World War 3 a good score, but Aliens of London kind of dragged it down a bit. But yeah, in terms of like our average for the 2-parters, mine did get better as they went along for me, quite considerably actually, because overall Enter Child, Dr. Dances was 9, and then Battle of Parting Ways 9.25, which is pretty damn good. But for you, your least favorite 2-parter was the Empty Child and the Dr. Dancers.
Interesting.
Which you gave an average of 7.75, and then the other 2 are on equal footing for you, 8.25.
Oh, how strange.
So why do you hate the Empty Child?
I know, I wouldn't have thought that, but I guess I do.
It's the Slitheen. God damn it.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I just thought
the
the
Slitheen. Yeah.
Because I won't lie, the Slitheen are my fave. So
yeah, that's fair enough. And then on average for both of us, the best episode singularly was The Parting of the Ways, which got 9.3 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, son. But very close to that was actually Dalek and Boomtown, which both got 9 with our average scores.
Yeah.
My overall average for the series was actually 8.03, so basically just 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Your average overall was 7.6 out of 10 for the whole series, which means if we combine both our scores, we'd give series 1 7.8 out of 10, which is fairly decent, I would say. And then if we look at giving every episode a rating out of 10, which means we could score this series out of 130. I've even gone to this.
Yeah.
My score is 104.5 out of 130.
Right.
And yours is 98.5 out of 130. And combined average score for both of us, we would give series 1 101.5 out of 130.
That sounds about right. It's strange because when I think on series 1, I think, it's a great series all around. But clearly, I don't think that.
I think, so you can think just generally that, that's a good season. But then when you go individually, obviously, you need to get a lot more.
Yeah.
We've critiqued quite a bit individually. And The Long Game just really does drag it down.
Yeah, I think The Long Game is the sort of dip in this one. And we're probably going to see a bigger dip with series 2 with 2 dud episodes, I think. At least 2 dud episodes.
At least, yeah. So I'm even not that big on New Earth, so...
No, and then I'm thinking Idiot's Lantern might be one for me as well.
Oh, yeah. I'd be very surprised if series 2 scores higher than series 1,
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
for me.
yeah. So I mean, even though we've put it like between a 7 and an 8, series 1 is great. Still go and watch it.
Yeah,
Don't
even though we
don't
gave it,
skip it. Even though we it seems
even though
like
we
we
gave it
partially rated
7.8 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
That's 78%. That's good.
yeah, that would be green on Metacritic.
Yeah.
That would be fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So
Hell yeah.
I'd say so. I'm going to throw in a wild card. Who's your favorite character in this series?
Ooh.
It could be a guest character, it can be a side character, it can be a main character, it can be a villain.
That's a very good question.
And why is it Simon Pegg?
Why is it the Moxa Balhoun?
Yeah, yeah.
Why is it one of Cassandra's surgeons?
Surgeon
2. Definitely Surgeon 2, if any of them.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very good question. Let's think. I mean, it probably, if I'm being honest, it's probably the Doctor. Just because Chris Ferguson's so good and he's often the best part for me. But I'd also want to shout out Margaret Blaine, I would say, because I think Annette Badland was fantastic. And they did some really interesting stuff with her character in the end. And I think in terms of like a supporting character in this series, I think her individual arc is also probably one of the more interesting ones.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree with that. Naturally, mine is Captain Jack.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know when. I just think it's the cool guy Indiana Jones-esque swagger that he has. I just think it's that sort of, he's the traditional hero, I guess.
Yeah.
The one that you always think of. And yeah, I just find his character incredibly attractive. Yeah, I just think he's great. And there's a special shout out to Margaret.
Margaret.
Yeah, and that guy, and the and
leave the mayor alone.
Him, yeah, and the mayor's assistant. He's the best one as well. Obviously the Ninth Doctor is up there as well. I'd love Christopher Eccleston to come back to the show in live action. But yeah, I'm just struggling to think about who else.
Trying to go through all the individual episodes. Like,
yeah, because I don't think Mickey's
Nancy from Empty Child's good.
Yeah, I'd say she's probably one of the better supports.
And of course, I love Linda with the Y, but
yeah,
she doesn't have as much to do.
Roderick,
I guess as Margaret
Roderick is also great.
Roderick, yeah.
But if I'm thinking of Mickey and Jackie, I'm not thinking they're the best characters. Sadly, I think Mickey might be a shoe in series 2, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Pete, I think as well in series 1. I think he's a great addition, even if he's only in one episode.
Yeah.
But I don't think because it's very much a sort of condensed cast in series 1. We've got the core cast and then we have 1 or 2 extras.
Yeah.
But that's not to say it's a bad thing. So what, taking out the statistics overall, if you had to give it out of 10, what would you give series 1?
I think as an average, probably like an 8.5 or something.
Yeah, I was thinking
just
8.
because I'm thinking like long game still. Like I actually doing this and like going week by week, like that whole thing with like undermining Rose's message at the end of the series. Like I hadn't even considered that until we did this. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is kind of a shame. So I would say like 8.5 overall, which is fairly close.
Yeah. I mean, I'd give it an 8 probably, which is quite close.
Yeah.
Are there any episodes that you changed your mind on throughout watching this that you didn't like and you've gone, hey, I love it? Or are there any that you thought you loved?
Let's see. I feel like I enjoyed Aliens of London more than I thought. I still didn't give it a very good score, but I did enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would. And I think, if anything, Bad Wolf wasn't quite as great as I was remembering. But apart from that, I think I fairly stayed consistent.
Yeah, I think mine was sort of similar. I think for me, End of the World and Unquiet Dead, I think I struggle to remember what I thought of them before, but I think I enjoyed them less rewatching them now than I remember.
After The Long Game, End of the World is your lowest score.
Yeah, because I don't know what it is about that episode. I think it just drags too long for me, and I don't know. It's just a strange one, but I remember liking it as growing up, and I still, whenever Toxic or
Tainted Love
come on the radio, I'm always thinking of the episode.
Yeah.
But I think that's the only thing I think of with the episodes.
Well, that's all right. It's not like Cassandra comes back.
or the face of Bo. Who are they?
Don't even know.
So sort of, if we're looking at series 1, then what are you expecting moving forward with series 2?
I am expecting better from Rose, please.
Yeah.
I'm expecting. I feel like. How do I feel about the 10th Doctor in series 2? I feel like I like him well enough. I'm not a huge fan of 10 in series 3.
Interesting.
I really like him in series 4. He's great. That's probably my favorite 10th
Series
Doctor.
4 is peak, I think.
Yeah.
That's the peak of Doctor Who.
Doctor and Donna are great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I like him in series 2 well enough. I think there's a lot of great episodes in that. I'm so excited for Tooth and Claw because I love that one. So excited for School Reunion. I love me some Cybermen. They're in it a lot in series 2. So I'll be kind of talking about how great they are. And yeah, I'm excited to revisit some stuff. I haven't watched the Satan Pit 2-parter in ages, so that'd be good. I can't wait to see Love and Monsters and Fear Her. I watched that with a critical lens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm expecting to not like it as much overall as series 1, but there's still a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be strange because this is the only time we're going to have one Doctor for one series. Everyone else, we're going to have that Doctor carry on, so we'll be able to compare, what they were like the previous series before. Whereas this one, we're effectively starting with a clean slate with the Doctor.
Yeah.
We can't really compare. Well, we can compare them with Christopher Eccleston, but to do it consistently, I think is a disservice to David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. So the only sort of crossover with this is Rose, Mickey, and Jackie, where we'll see how their characters develop in series 2. Because sort of the end of series 2 is the end of their arc at that point. So it's going to be a strange one, I think, and especially because we're starting with the next episode will be mainly focused on Jackie, Mickey, and Rose. There's minimal Doctor in this one, which is a strange way to introduce a new Doctor that you want people to love.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if we can spot any similarities between the episodes of series 1 and series 2, how much sort of story beats follow the same, how much of the 9th Doctor we can see in the 10th Doctor, if any. And yeah, I think I'm excited for series 2. If I keep thinking about it, I keep thinking I'm not going to like as many episodes as I think I'm going to like.
Yeah, a lot is kind of creeping into my head. I do think it's my least favorite series of the revival, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same. I think, yes, I struggle to remember all of Capaldi's seasons and what numbers they are, just because I haven't rewatched them as much. But then that's also a detriment to series 2 because I've watched it a lot. So episodes like New Earth, I've seen a lot. Episodes like School Reunion, I know that I think The Sun sent out like the School Reunion on a DVD that you got free with every paper you bought. So I watched that a lot. So I've watched a lot of series 2, I think, more than any other series of New Who. So it'll be very interesting to see if that's impacted me at all. Hopefully it hasn't. But
I feel like we're going to start to have a lot more kind of differences in opinion, I think, with series 2 onwards.
Yes, and then
it should be exciting.
Especially when we get to like Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi, I think we're going to... But then again, I might have changed my mind on some of the episodes, and you might have done for this one. I know sort of last night we had discussions about what we think our most underrated episodes are for the Doctor Who. Do you think any episodes of series 1 are underrated for what they are?
Underrated? Potentially Boomtown, but I feel like everything else kind of gets its fair due, I would say.
Are there any that are overrated?
Overrated? I don't know, actually. Probably not. Well, I also think Unquiet Dead's quite underrated. But yeah.
Yeah, I think for mine, maybe overrated would be the Empty Child and Dr. Chance two-parter. Underrated, maybe Boomtown. I can never tell if people like it or don't, because it pops up in like underrated lists, but then it pops up in people saying like I don't like it. I'm like I don't know how people feel. I don't know what the consensus is. But that's definitely an underrated one for me. And maybe again, Father's Day I think is another one where you
weren't that big on it, were you? Really?
Yeah, and I still can't tell if people think that's underrated or overrated, because sometimes I see loads of people
you gave it 6.5. You were brutal.
Yeah, so sometimes I see people thinking, yeah, it's great, but then other times, like me, I'm like, do people like it?
It's okay.
Yeah, but And as I mentioned before, doing all this, not every episode of Doctor Who has to be the most amazing episode of sci-fi you've ever seen.
Evidently.
I mean, it's not like,
Will series 2 get a 10 out of 10? Stay tuned.
No. It's not like Star Trek, where it has like 20 odd episodes, so there's more room for great episodes and less episodes. You condense into 13, so you're seeing more in less, I think, because more things are pushed into the episodes, which can sometimes help and sometimes can't. And we know that they play around with the format moving forwards of how many episodes they want, how long they're going to be. I think Christmas Invasion is it an hour long?
I'm pretty sure it's an hour, yeah.
I think all the Christmas ones sort of follow an hour. Then obviously we see with Jodie Whittaker's, they pushed it to 10, I think it was, an hour long. But I think the one coming out this year is going to be 7 or 8, I think.
I think it's 8. I think they said 8.
Because of COVID. And then they've messed about.
So they've cut the Celine 2-part, basically.
Yeah, that's a shame. Next time. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there for now. I'll probably put this out midweek, so we'll be back on the weekend with the Christmas Invasion. So by all means, subscribe for that. Leave us some comments. What were your favourite parts of Series 1? Do you have anything that you didn't like? Did you dislike Rose as much as we turned out to? Do you actually love Adam? Some people might. Probably not, but some might. But yeah, let us know. And we will see you next week for some Christmas in April.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.